but
Sorry,
we promise we won't go past noon. Okay. All right. The materials that were used to prepare this presentation are a combination of the debriefing document that we received from last year's application, the HUD-NOFO, and we also used local CoC priorities and the rating and ranking information. We would ask that you mute during the presentation. If you have questions, please put them in the chat box. And please sign in the chat box with your name and organization. We're recording the presentation. I hope no one has an objection to that. And these slides and the debriefing document will be emailed to you, and the recording will be available also for you to listen to. So what we hope to accomplish today is we would like to go over last year's scoring and how we will use those for this year's strategies. We'll look at the HUD homeless policy priorities, which are also listed in the NOFO. And we'll look at the Racine CoC NOFO priorities and needs and talk about some application information, and we will attempt to answer any questions that you might have. So let's start with the competition debriefing document, which I will send out to everybody. There were 200 available points. This does not include bonus points. This was just the basic application points. The highest score achieved was 188.75. The median score was 154.5, and the weighted median was 162.25. The Racine CoC scored 143.5 points. We scored below the median and weighted median, and the weighted median is important from the perspective that if you scored above it, your CoC probably got an increase in some funding above their annual renewal demand. And if you scored below, you probably lost money or stayed the same. And then the small CoCs tend to score lower than large CoCs do. Points and scores do matter. We want to get credit for what we're doing together as a CoC and individually in your agencies. We want to make sure that our application reflects what we're doing. We shouldn't be doing stuff just to get points, but if we're not doing something, we should look at why we're not doing it and should we be doing it. But again, we really do want to get credit for all the hard work you're putting in. So how we get funded depends on our score. There is a tier 1 and a tier 2. Tier 1 right now is 93% of the CoC annual renewal demand. The annual renewal demand is the amount of funding that would be needed to totally fund all of the renewal projects from the prior year. And so tier 1 is 93%. At one point, it was 100%, and HUD has cut that down. Last year, it was 95%. Now we're down to 93%. You can place new or bonus projects in tier 1. Traditionally, that's where most or all of the renewals have been ranked. Last year, there was a new project ranked in tier 1. What happens in that case is that if you rank a newer bonus project in tier 1, it pushes the renewals down in at least probably part of a renewal, if not a whole renewal or more than one renewal, into tier 2. And that may jeopardize those projects. So overall, we want to score as high as we can. Because we want to get not only the renewals funded, but new projects and bonus projects funded. The way HUD does this is they do the scoring, and then they rank everybody from top to bottom according to score. And then they start going down through the list, and they do all the renewal funding. And when that, and then they start in on new and bonus projects. So when that money runs out, that's where they stop. So, if you are scoring below that median, that is why you're probably not going to get more projects, because they'll run out of money. And those bigger cities and COCs and larger projects tend to take up more money than the smaller COCs and smaller projects. And so then they end up, down at the bottom, not getting funded. I have a little construction going on here at my house again today, and I hope you're not hearing that too much. All right, so here is the debriefing document. Might be a little bit difficult to see, and I will send this out. But we scored really well in some areas, and then we didn't do really well in some other areas. And it's kind of hard to tell by how they categorize these. Where you didn't do well, you actually have to look at the application and see what was included in it. Also, HUD does not include all parts of the application. There are some additional pages to this where they explain how you scored, and they don't give you the entire application so it's kind of hard sometimes to figure out what question we didn't do that well on. But the first thing Teresa and I did was we looked at those areas where we did not score real well, which you can see there were 29 points possible. We scored 15.5. On system performance, 59 points were available, and we scored 35. And then on this coordination with housing and healthcare, we lost 14 points right there. So that's 14 out of that 18.5 that would have gotten us pretty close to that weighted median score. So some of the strategies for this year, and here's a link when you get the slides. This will take you right to the NOFO. And I'm going to go through this slide, and then Teresa's going to show you a couple things in the NOFO that we'd like you to review. But read it. Please read the NOFO. It is 124 pages. You probably will skip over some things, but the definitions and the scoring are revealing and helpful, especially if you're doing a new application. Usually in the NOFO, the questions are the same or similar to previous years. So that's one of the things Teresa and I have looked at. We compared questions, and sometimes they'll change the wording, but they'll be real similar. And other times what HUD is looking at is, let's say last year you said you were going to do XYZ. What they're really looking at this year is, well, what progress have you made toward that? What have you done toward it? And I'm talking right now about the CoC application itself. There's two parts to this. There's the CoC application, and then there's the individual project applications. And then we're looking at where we scored the lowest and what we can do to score the maximum points there. And so there's information that we will request from all of you, applicants and non-applicants and others in the community. And the information that you provide to us is really important. We don't know everything that's going on in the Racine CoC or your agencies. I was going through some of the questions yesterday, and I thought, oh yeah, we forgot last year that this or this was done. So or we just found out about it. So It's very, very important. Your responses and your information is really helpful. Teresa, do you just want to show those two scoring rubrics on the NOFO?
The scoring rubrics. Sorry.
Yeah. Now I have to stop share, right?
Yes. Are you talking about in the grant
NOFO.
itself? In the NOFO itself?
Yeah,
Okay.
those pages.
Okay, a second, let me share. We'll do this. Chat open. Okay, so if you go into on our homepage, I have tried to keep everything here as up to date as possible with all the links. If you want to read this NOFO, you can go here down at the bottom of the first page. You can also go on funding competition and you'll see the NOFO application down here when they released it. So the pages that she's talking about are 55. Let's see if that actually opens 55. Yeah. Talking about this?
Yes.
Okay. So this is for new applications. And this is what we generally look at when you're trying to fill out these applications. They're telling you how much it's worth. So when you're talking about new permanent housing projects must receive at least 4 out of 5 points, they're telling you how important it is and then scoring you within these. That's why we are not able to look at when Gay showed you that section that says, okay, here's where you scored in this category. We don't know. It might say we got 4 out of 5, but we don't know which one we didn't get because they don't tell you these. And then if you go down, here's the other categories, same thing here. So you'll notice, try not to go too fast, each of these, new HMIS, pretty much proposed planning will be carried out by the funding grant or compliant. And then when you go a little bit farther down, let's see, that's that one. Then we go, do you want me to go to 76 as well?
I think it maybe 74 it starts on.
Or 74, sorry.
You were close.
Here we go.
Yeah.
And then these are, oh my goodness.
So this is the COC
application
itself. Yeah, the COC portion.
So this is our collaborative application. And we do fairly well here. That's 1A, and then one of the ones we didn't do well on, this is B, was C. And it's always confusing. Sorry to try to find it. You can see it's very long here. F.
31 pages to be exact of scoring.
Where did that one? Am I in the 1C? You can tell it's a little confusing to go through. This is 1A.
I think that's one we got 5 out of 5 points.
Yes, this is B. That can't be right because we did fine on that one.
I think it was the next section we didn't.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the sections. Housing first. This is why we're always asking about these things. Each of these are checkoffs. Some of them are more, some of them are writing in. If they're worth more than 4 points, we have to usually do a drop down that says yes or no, and then explain why. You'll see 7 points for advancing racial equity, 5 for advancing, for involving individuals with lived experience.
We probably didn't get full points on the racial equity.
Here we go.
Which we will probably do better this year because now there is a racial equity statement. Last year, all we could say is that that individual agencies have them and the COC would be developing one. System performance measures, we did not do that well on.
Right. I think these are other sections though too. So you can see it's very involved. So when we're writing these and we're asking you questions, some of these questions are coming from over here. And the rating and ranking, this is that when you see on the calendar, there's 30-day deadline for projects that are no later than 30. You know, we have to prove that you all filled out and submitted your applications on time. That's why we have that deadline. That's why we ask for copies. Some things we have to actually show screenshots that says yes, and it actually, I have to do this where I go up like this and it shows the date and the time, and then the screenshot goes into that. So this is what we're looking at. We get our point in time counts, system performance. This is the up to 60 points for system-wide performance, and this is where we have, again, what are you doing? What have you done? I know I'm going kind of fast here, slow it down, but these are things that you can look up. It goes all the way to page 106. Returns to homelessness. They want to know, you know, not only how are we doing placing people in, but how are we're successful, but what's happening to people that are returning to homelessness? What's our percentage? Are we improving with jobs and income growth? And then this is here, 7 points. We didn't get this because we didn't submit anything. We'll award up to 14 points that submit new PSH and rapid rehousing projects. They generally tell us, hey, if you at least put something in the box, you'll get at least 1 point. There's no opportunity for 1 point. So because we did not submit anything for leveraging housing resources, we have to have attached letters of commitments, contracts, all of these things. We get nothing. So we lost 7 points there. And Gay's going to cover this later. And then this one is leveraging healthcare, showing MOUs, substance abuse, disorder treatment, all of these things that you guys are all doing. And Gay's going to cover this again. That's another 17. So 14 points we had absolutely no option for. That would have bumped us way over the median. We're not merging, so we don't have to do that. So that's what Gay and I look at. We look at the questions, and then we look at this, and then we also go into what's called the detailed application instructions, and you will have those renewal projects, new applications. That's on the front page here. I have included renewal project applications, new applications, accessing it in news, eSnaps, the 23 project application FAQs. They have not put up the detailed application instructions for new, I don't believe. If they are, I have them up there somewhere. But here's questions. If you have them, check there. And they will tell you how to submit, how to access, how to edit your profile, all of these nice things. Yes, so let's see. Let me just check one more time. Also have do's and don'ts down here for going through that you might find interesting. I hope you find interesting and valuable. And then if you go to the HUD site, there's more things here, and this is what I was looking for. I thought I put these up there, but maybe I didn't, so I will go back and redo them. They did not submit them all at the same time. But this is a resource that will tell you how to go through, and you should pay attention to those, especially if you have a new application. I'm going fast because I want you to see what they talk about here. This is what's a new eligible, what's expansion project, helpful from prior years. Here's how to get in to eSnaps, because all new applications and renewals need to go on there. Here's how to set it up. how to get into eSnaps, which can be a little intimidating, how to set them up and establish them. So essentially what you're getting is, here's how to do it. I thought they had a few more things. It's very long. It's 143 pages. Wanted to get to one other thing here. So they go through question by question here and asking you how to do it. One thing I'm going to remind you all of, and this traps me every time, save. Anytime you do something, save it in there, because sometimes you could be typing away and it will time you out. Once it times you out, it just might say you're timed out, but you think you've got it all on there and you hit save and it logs you out. So please remember to save, especially if you're doing it as a new application. If you've not done this before, please save. Anytime you put, I save after I type in any new question, any changes. So again, this is from HUD. It's very good. Is there any other ones you wanted me to go through here, Gay?
No, if we miss something, we can go at the end and kind of go through the website and see if we missed anything.
Oh, here, this was one. Sorry. This is your deadline. These are the deadlines, the timeline. And you'll see in here that there are things that HUD says. HUD requires all applications to be submitted at least 30 days prior to full application due date. HUD requires public notification and rejection 15 days before submittal date. HUD requires 2 days of public comment period. So, and there's also some links down here if you have any issues or questions on how to get in, and a video. So some people found this helpful last year. So this is basically last year's with all the new time dates in there. If you have any questions, please email Gay or myself, and we will go through and make sure it's clear for you. This is official. This is on the time. It's on the website. And again, our major deadline, the deadline for HUD is the 28th. Our local deadline is August 25th. For your grants, that's to get those in that 30-day in advance. And so I am doing my very best to keep things updated on the website for you, and trying to add to the main page as well. So it's either here or funding FY23 HUD NOFA. I should say NOFA. Oh well. Okay.
Okay.
Sharing.
So, okay.
And it's back to you.
All right. Now I have to see where I was. Okay. So moving on. So some of the other strategies, and Teresa touched on these a little bit when she was.
You're not sharing.
Thank you, Teresa.
There we go.
Okay. All right. And she touched on these a little bit when she was going through the scoring, but one way that I think that we will be able to get some points, because I know this is going on in the CoC right now, is that we are coordinating with particularly healthcare organizations. It will require a MOU, and this is applicable to both renewal and new project applications. And the definition of healthcare is very, very broad. It would include SOAR, organizations that come and do vaccines, which could be a hospital, Walgreens, I know, has gone to Halo in the past and Hospitality Center to do vaccines. I know there are some student nursing programs that go to various agencies. If we can get an MOU with them, that would count as coordinating with healthcare. Another area we've identified is the leveraging healthcare resources. Now, this would be new project applications. And when I'm talking about new project applications, it can either an expansion project is considered a new project, and bonus projects, or the CoC bonus. So it's both the DV and the CoC bonus are considered new project applications. And then there's the insurance provider, let's say an insurance provider, Medicaid. I have to research a little bit more about the Medicaid part of this, but it's very possible that we already have something in place in the CoC that we could expand, let's say, to one of the current projects. And we would then be leveraging healthcare resources. Or again, some of these healthcare services that our agencies are using, we may be able to leverage with an MOU or other commitment. The minimum value of the assistance needs to be 25% of the funding. Now, this could be cash or in kind. And that's basically your match, because match is required for anything except leasing. And then another area we've identified is leveraging housing resources. And again, this applies to the PSH or permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing. And the housing subsidy needs to be something not funded through the CoC or ESG funding. So things that have come to my mind are HPP, HAP, Section 8 vouchers, HUD-VASH. There's a DHS project that we have in the CoC right now for housing supports, SSVF, and private funding. And I'm sure there are more sources out there that I'm not even aware of that you may have access to, that we can talk about. If somebody's interested in this, we're going to highly encourage some of you to think about this. Again, so here with PSH, 25% of the units have to be funded from the non-CoC ESG source. So let's say we used HAP for this. 25% of the units we would project for the new project would have to be funded by HAP. And for rapid rehousing, 25% of program participants must be assisted in housing. So for those of you that aren't real familiar with how PSH and rapid rehousing housing units are funded, in PSH, those units are leased by the agency providing the service, and then their project participants reside in those units. And for rapid rehousing, it's normally called rental assistance versus leasing funds. And those are units that the agency and the participant locate, and the participant actually has the lease, and then the housing subsidy is paid out of the funding source. So that's the major difference between the funding of units for PSH and rapid rehousing. And again, you would have to have an MOU or a written commitment between you and the agency or funding source. Are there any questions? Let me just check the chat here. Okay, Teresa. Any questions up till now? Okay, then I'm going to move on. These are the HUD homeless policy priorities. We are already using some of these and have been for years in Racine, but if you want to read more about each one of these, will find these articulated at the beginning of the NOFO document, beginning of the 124 pages. And these are priorities that are looked at when HUD is scoring project applications. How HUD scores and how HUD looks at the applications are based on these 9 criteria.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in here. Can you go back a bit again, Gay?
Yep.
Sorry, I had to find my mute.
My screen was stuck, so.
One of the things that, again, I attended a webinar, and one of the things that they talked about was that these priorities are not new, and that these priorities are here to stay, and that we should be looking at these every year on enhancing them. And none of these things should be surprises to us, even though some of us get surprised. So when they talk about using a housing first approach, there's a question on the applications. Does this, do you use a housing first approach? And it's yes or no. But then they turned around and said to us, you need to tell us how you are evaluating or monitoring for this. And you have to submit a narrative on it. So when you hear us all of a sudden, which will seem like all of a sudden, it will be all of a sudden saying, we want to know how you're doing your housing first approach. We want more data on this. We're going to ask you more questions on how you're doing. It's not because we're getting pickier. It's because these are the strictness that HUD is using nationwide. So I just also with engaged persons with lived experience. This has also been a biggie, to the point where the National Alliance to End Homelessness has said if you invite them to come and talk to your CoC, and the one question that they will ask you is, do you tell us how many people and where you have people with lived experience engaged? Where are they in leadership roles? And if you don't have any, they aren't coming. They will have nothing to do with you. So it sounds harsh, but it's a way for them to really say, hey, put your money where your mouth is. Show us that you're actually doing these things. Don't expect us to say that checking a box is good. And you'll see number 5, health, housing, and service agencies. The leveraging those resources, it's only going to become more and more stricter, requiring, and worth more points on these applications. So I just wanted to toss that in there.
So there is a new requirement also this year for the CoC application that relates to number 8, the engaging persons with lived experience. There needs to be a group that reviews the CoC application and signs off on it. So we will be looking for recommendations from all of you for people for this committee. And that is new this year. So,
and by lived experience, it has to be 7 years or less lived experience. And this form will have to have their actual signature. This letter has to have their actual signature. It can't be an electronic signature. It has to be actually, and then sent to us, and then we have to copy it and send it in that way. So that's all I have to say.
okay. So the NOFO priorities, no surprise, reflect the HUD priorities. It's just a list of items, and they're basically the same. But that's what they're looking for in the NOFO. The local priorities in doing this application and operating the CoC mirror the HUD NOFO and system performance measure priorities. And the list is, as you'll notice, the same. And the rating and ranking committee, as well as the leadership council, have reviewed what our project priorities are as far as vulnerable populations. And this year there were 2 changes made. Aging 55 plus was added, and gender identity expression was added. So we now have 7 population project priorities. So that's something that will be looked at also when you submit a new application. There is a page where you, and in the renewals also, a page in the application where there is a checkbox that lists various subpopulations, and also there's an answer that says all. So if the project that you have is serving all of the listed subpopulations, you just check all. If you are a project that is doing a specific targeted project to a specific population, then those are the boxes that you'll check. And let's see, the Leadership Council just approved this prioritization. There had been a vote, and based on some data that a writer presented in a different meeting, we were looking at the data, and we said this needs to go back to rating and ranking and then back to Leadership Council, because what our data was showing us in particular was this aging 55 plus is a huge need in our CoC. And then we want to we added the gender identity and expression because we want to make sure that those individuals are being equitably served in the CoC. So these are goals for a strong Racine CoC. This is where our efforts are centered and how we're how we are going forward. And I think for the most part, the CoC is right on track here. But these are things that the application will look at, and they'll want to know how we're doing, what we're doing. And again, I can't say this enough. The information you provide to Teresa and I for the application is invaluable. So the funding that is available this year, we have $950,939 available in Tier 1. That is 93%. So our actual renewal need is a little over $1 million, but only 950,000 plus some change is in, well, it's almost $1 million, is in Tier 1. There is money available for CoC bonuses. The CoC bonus is 148,478. And the domestic violence bonus, actually, this is quite a bit more than we've received in the past. It's 212,000 available. I shouldn't say receive, it's what's available. This is a competition, and this is where the scoring comes in. But just applying for these projects, she will increase your scoring, and if your scoring's increased, then there's a better chance that you're actually going to get one or more of these. And we also believe we have about 45,000 in voluntary reallocations this year. That may go up or down depending on whether or not everybody's able to adequately fund their project with their reallocation or what is needed for reallocation. So you can create new projects, which, as I said before, an expansion project is considered a new project. So that money is available. Any questions so far? Okay. So those of you that have been part of this process in the past know that eSnaps is where you submit your application and then your contract materials once you're awarded the project. If anyone needs to set up an organization profile and their own profile to be able to sign into eSnaps, this would be primarily a new project or new agency. Let Teresa and me know if you need help. Also check with us to make sure that your agency doesn't already have a profile set up under the Racine CoC. The Safe Haven, or not Safe Haven, I'm sorry. Legal Action actually has a profile in there because they have applied in the past for funds and they haven't for many years. If they were to apply again, then we just have to add somebody from Legal Action to that profile. Catherine Marion Housing, same thing this year. They already had a profile. And if they want to apply, if they're applying for a new project, then they would just use that profile. We just had to add them to it. These are the eligible new project types. We've kind of gone over this, but we're going to go over it again. There's the new CoC bonus projects, new DV bonus project, new projects through reallocation. The DV bonus project can be a rapid rehousing project or a joint transitional and rapid rehousing projects. For those of you who have been around a while, you know that they being HUD had phased out transitional housing. They have been looking at some studies and had some studies done and found that victims or survivors of domestic violence actually did very well in transitional housing. And so we're seeing more of that in the DV world and DV projects, but they haven't really brought it back as far as other projects that I can recall. Well, actually, you can do a transitional and a CoC bonus project. Yes, I stand corrected. Okay. So these are the types of housing. You can have permanent supportive housing, which serves chronically homeless. And actually that assistance, I mean, it could theoretically be for their entire life. It's as long as the supportive services are needed and as long as they want to remain in the project. Rapid rehousing is tenant-based rent assistance. And it is limited to 24 months. And then we do see participants in rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing, sometimes moving back and forth for various reasons. It's usually from rapid to permanent supportive housing. The theory is to get people housed as soon as possible. And there may be people who are placed in rapid rehousing that later discover probably need more assistance. And so HUD allows it, and our CoC written standards do allow people to transfer. We do have a transfer policy. And then we have the joint transitional housing and rapid rehousing projects. All of the new and renewal projects and the rating and ranking committee, and Teresa and I will be looking at this. And if we receive your applications before the deadline, we will send anything back to ask you to correct or suggest that you change it. But they have to have a housing first approach, have to agree to enter data into HMIS or the DV alternative. Must use coordinated entry. You have to have documented match. It can be in kind or cash. 25% of the funds requested, except for leasing. And And they must agree to abide by the HUD interim rules and any other certifications and assurances listed on the OFA. And they also will have to have a code of conduct registered with HUD. Teresa looked last year and there may have been one agency that we did not see that had a code of conduct that I think was resolved, but Teresa will check again. And project selections, so there is both a scoring tool and a rating and ranking prioritization process, procedure, policy. And that is how projects are selected, scored, and then they're ranked. And then there's an appeal process. It's a relatively short time frame, but there is a process where you can appeal your ranking. So there is a distinction when we talk about Racine project prioritization and CE port prioritization. They're two different types of priorities, and you may see some of the same elements or the same subpopulations in both, and they're both data driven. So as far as the project prioritization for the CoC application, we're looking at the need for a particular type of housing program or services for those programs. And then the rating and ranking work group will review the rankings, and then they recommend, they will look at the project prioritizations. They'll review them, they'll recommend changes to the leadership council. And then the CE prioritization focuses on needs of particular populations. And that's where you may get some of the same elements. For example, chronically homeless, you'll usually see prioritized for both. And the CE work group is responsible for reviewing those prioritizations and then recommends any changes to leadership. So after your projects are entered into eSNAPs, and I believe that deadline is August 25th before midnight. After they're entered, they're reviewed by rating and ranking, and they use the scoring tool that has been approved by the Leadership Council in the past. And they are also looking at a couple of other changes for this year. I don't know that they've all been voted on yet. But we look at thresholds and performance for renewals, thresholds for new projects, and then there is a project prioritization policy that they also use. And then after that's done, they rank the projects, and everyone is notified of where they rank. And then there's the appeal period. Appeals must be timely, they must be within the time frame specified, and it's also on that timeline that Teresa showed you that's on the CoC website. And you can appeal because of a clerical error such as a math error, typo. Last year I believe we had a math error, and I know one year we had a typo where a number got typed wrong. And those are things that the staff can change, and then they change, and then they take it back to rating and ranking if it actually changes the position of the ranking, because rating and ranking has to make a new recommendation, and then Leadership Council has to vote on it. Or if the rating and ranking prioritization policy was not followed. So if you're ranked in a particular position and you're looking at the prioritization policy and it doesn't appear that it was followed, that's another reason you could appeal. And then after all that happens, we'll notify you of any requested changes to your application. So after you submit it on August 25th, there are still changes that can be made. And one of the things that rating and ranking and leadership can do is that they can increase or decrease the amount of your funding. So if they decrease it, it would be an involuntary reallocation. And I just can't think off the top of my head that where we've actually done an involuntary. I mean, I think it's come down to that point in a couple situations, and the agencies have just said that they would reallocate. So we considered those voluntary. And it usually has to do with performance, or they feel that there's too much money in a particular category, and that maybe you need to shift some money around. But generally, they usually leave the renewals alone, but they may ask somebody to reallocate, particularly if they haven't been spending money over a period of years. And then you'll make those changes in the application, and then Teresa and I will review them again, and then we'll tell you it's okay to click submit. At that point, your individual project applications do not go to HUD. What happens is they get uploaded in the portal to the CoC application. And at that point, Teresa and I can still send them back to you if we see something, or you go look at your application, or like, oh, you know, I want to fix this. I want to change this or change the wording. Because HUD doesn't have it yet. HUD will not have it until we submit the entire CoC application. I would caution against asking to have it sent back to you the last few days of the competition. We've had problems in the past with some applications getting stuck, and for several days, and it's pretty stressful for that agency and for Teresa and me while we're waiting for HUD to hopefully fix it. It has always been fixed, but it is pretty stressful. So if you anticipate needing to make any changes toward the end, we can make some of those changes, but generally we do have to send it back to you to make them. You may be asked for additional documentation, and the two that are asterisks, the equity survey is required for all projects, and the quarterly draws, we'll give you a deadline on that. We will need those for all of the renewal projects, and you may be asked for some selected policies if you're a renewal project, and you may be asked for your last audit or financials if you're a new project. So we were going to take you to the Racine website at this point, but Teresa did that earlier and went through most of it. Teresa, is there additional information that you would like to show them on the website before we go to questions?
There's one other thing I want to show them with the calendar, if I can do that real briefly.
And I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to give the screen to you, and then I think the next, yes. Then the next item of business would be if you have any questions or discussion. And looks like we are going to finish well before noon. Okay.
Okay. I just want to point this out. I do on our website under calendar, I do have our calendar. And I've put in all the deadlines for our reports and for our submitting. And as an aside, I also have when your HIT and PIT reports are due. But if you want any of these things to go on your own calendar, you can copy through my calendar, and it will allow you to go in there and copy it. Or you can go in and at least see the information. And one of the things that you can do is see, oops, you can see the note that I have. You can see the text. If you put it in agenda view, it's a little clearer. and it will say more details. And again, it will open up and show you, well, it did. Okay, there we go. All the details. A lot of these are on the timeline that I gave you, but if you wanted to add it to your calendar, you have that ability. And that's for anything that we have coming up in regular meetings. And that's all I wanted to show you. Okay. We have one question in the chat, Gay.
Yes. Does the CoC offer any assistance in properly configuring an MOU? The answer to that is yes. Teresa has some language for the healthcare MOU, I believe it is, from another CoC. And we can provide that. I am going to be gone from the 22nd through the 4th of September. But I can offer some additional assistance when I'm back. And the MOUs themselves, you have some time after you submit your application on August 25th to get those to us. So yeah, let me know if you need some help, but Teresa does have some language. Barb?
Yeah, good morning. This is Barb with the LGBT Center, and I just wanted to put something out in the air here. We are not applying for any of the grants here, but I do want to just kind of put something out there. If you or your agency is interested in specializing in some LGBT housing and are looking for a partner, either on a project or and maybe not even this year but the future, that's because we don't have housing experience, but we do know our population, and we often have people who are looking for housing, so would love to partner with someone on that in the future. I also have a private investor who's interested in purchasing a home with, it would probably be a leasing model, and like renters. So if we could help target some LGBT or BIPOC folks in that situation, please reach out to me and we can talk offline on that. But thank you. This information's been very helpful for the future.
Thank you, Barb. And I mean, I think that's a good example of what we are talking about when we're talking about some of this leveraging, where the CoC funding could pay for the services and other funding would pay for the housing, or you could even do a new project where both housing and services were provided. But I mean, these are the kind of partnerships that we need to be open to. So question, does the CoC have any CoC level MOUs with healthcare providers, or is it pursuing any? Not right now, but it is not out of the question. So for, when we think of the formal healthcare system, like hospitals, that's one type. The broader type that HUD is talking about was SOAR. We did at one time have a CoC SOAR MOU with legal action. I think Halo right now could pretty easily enter into one with legal action, but I think the SOAR might be an area with more of the informal emphasis that HUD has, would be something we might be able to do on a CoC basis again. But definitely the more formal partnerships with like Aurora, Ascension, and other health providers, I think that is something that would be helpful to everyone to pursue, and I do recall Teresa a couple times mentioning something to me, so.
The one thing that yes, I want to pursue this, some of it got left off of the table for other issues that came up during the year, but for the CoC grants, they do end up having to be, I know you're talking about to enter in with the CoC as an agency, but they have to be connected to a specific agency for the funding, because they have to identify where the 25% funding match, and there has to be specific detail that they're going to provide per that program or project.
So, for an actual project, so there's a coordination piece, which, just could be an MOU, and then there's the actual projects that connect housing and, healthcare. Basically, there's the two different projects. So I think for the, one where it's called coordinating in the NOFA, I think those you could have a, CoC wide MOU of some type, but you're absolutely right. If it's going to be one of the new projects, bonus projects, or a reallocation project, I think it probably needs to be more formal, as you said, Teresa, because of the 25%. But it could be in kind, but it would need to be with an agency.
Yeah, it just needs to be spelled out with the agency, whether it's in kind or cash. And you're right, it can be in kind, but they have to spell it out within the agreement that this is what they're providing, and they actually say they want the dates. So while it doesn't have to be specific dates, it would be between 2024, X month of 2024 and X month of into 2025. So really, they're just making sure that this is a project that has a true commitment from the healthcare provider.
Other questions? All right, so we know there's interest in a new DV bonus project. And we know we have some reallocated funds, and we know there is some interest in a new CoC project. Certainly we can have more than one agency apply for funding, but if possible, we would like to cover all of our bases here, and have project applications. Teresa, do you have anything to add to that?
No, just that all new projects have to go into eSNAPs. We don't have a separate application like we did last year. The only thing separate would be the DEI questionnaire, and then the other documents that you had. And you do need to be sure to submit a PDF version of what you are presenting, because there's agencies like CVI and LSS and ICA. We can't log in and see your applications because you're part of a larger regional or national network. So it's the only way we can review them.
Yes, so the other long-standing rule we've had in the Racine CoC is that unless your agency has CoC applications in more than one CoC, that you add Teresa and me, and it wouldn't necessarily be Teresa and me. I mean, it's whoever's doing the application or who is the CoC executive director. That's where I'm going with this. Should be added to your application so we can get in there. And in this case, this year, it was very valuable because the agency that needed to be added back into the CoC application system, well, the application was there, but the only person at that point who could have added the two staff that needed to be added from that agency was me, because I was the only person on there. And that's one really valuable reason to do that. But if you have a CoC applications in more than one CoC, then you're not required to do that. So at the current time, that would apply to LSS, ICA, and CVI, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, so no, we can't see your project application unless we're on it. So the rest of you, we can kind of go in and peek and see what's going on and that you're working on it, but we still need the PDFs because Rating and Ranking needs to review them. So. Other questions? So if you are interested in submitting some type of new project or entering into an MOU for the coordination piece versus a new project, please let Teresa and I know as soon as possible so we can help you out. And as I said, I am going to be on vacation and pretty much unavailable between the 22nd of August and the 4th of September. So if you need some of my help, try to get a hold of me sooner than later. Okay. Well, I thank everyone for your time and everything that you do within the CoC and your agencies. And I know we're all in this together, and I'm happy to still be working on the CoC application with all of you. Teresa, anything?
No. Good luck, everybody.
Okay. Happy writing. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is Gay hang on?
Yep. I won't end the meeting.
Gonna stop the recording.
Holly had to step away, so I think